All right, we have now gone live, and it is recording or being recorded. So just a heads up on that. We will give folks just a couple of minutes to join in. I'm going to put a message in the chat just so folks can give us a shout out as they are joining. All right, looks like we've got some great folks in our audience, and hopefully we'll get some chats coming in just a couple of minutes as people are joining us for today's session. You are joining us if you're here for a panel discussion on promising practices to close dual enrollment access gaps. We have a great panel with us today, so we want to welcome you all and thank you all for joining us. This excellent panel that is assembled for you today represents campuses in our system who have demonstrated institutional effectiveness in facilitating dual enrollment. In particular, if you take a look at their outcomes for their students, they have risen to the top in terms of the diversity of the students that are accessing dual enrollment on their campuses. The data displayed in our system dashboards bears this out for us, but the demographics of students on their campuses are trending in a great direction. So hence, our panelists are with us today to share some time with us and to share some best practices with us to help us sort of see what they have employed on their campuses so that we hopefully can scale that out across many of our campuses in our system. So with that, I'll frame for you what our time today in this panel will look like. We will do some panelist introductions here in just a moment so that you guys can hear from each of them. Each of our panelists will also share with you some information about their respective campuses, how they've used data to inform their planning and their practices on their campus. And then we'll have some time for some Q&A where we invite you to share your comments and questions. You have the chat feature here. There's also the Q&A feature. I will do my best to monitor those as we go throughout this panel today, and we will certainly hope that time will afford us an opportunity to address some of those with our panelists. So with that, again, welcome. My name is Michelle Lair, and I serve as the Career and College Promise and CTE Coordinator at the System Office. So many of you here on this call I know and speak with on a daily basis. And so with that, I'd like for you to meet our panelists. So we'll start first and foremost with Miss Sierra Griffin, and let Sierra introduce herself.
Hey everybody, my name is Sierra Griffin and I am the College and High School Programs Coordinator for Bladen County, located in Dublin, North Carolina. I'm so happy to be here.
Sierra. Next we have with us Miss Jennifer Welch-Jones.
Hello everyone, I am Dr. Jennifer Welch-Jones and I am the Director of Career and College Promise at Halifax Community College, and we are located in Weldon, North Carolina.
And last but not least, Miss Mackenzie Burke.
Good afternoon. I'm Mackenzie Berg. I'm the career coach for Piedmont Community College on the Caswell campus.
Awesome. So you've met everyone, and now we're going to take some time for each of the panelists to tell us a little bit more about themselves. And we'll just go round robin in that same order. We'll hear from them about themselves a little, what their role specifically is in CCP on their campus, sort of how and when did they come to start this work or to begin in this work on their campus, and then just give us a quick overview of their campus sort of in general. And they'll talk to us in particular about CCP facilitation on their campus as well. So we'll hand it off to Sierra and then Jennifer and then Mackenzie just to give us some opening comments.
Thank you, Michelle. So like I said, I am at Bladen Community College and I joined this family in 2015, a few short months after finishing my master's degree. This position was brand new. They created it from scratch just because I think they were aware that this program would grow and they needed somebody dedicated to serving that particular population of students. but we didn't have an idea that it would grow so fast. It's been amazing. So BCC is one of the smaller community colleges in the system. Pre-COVID, we usually have about 1,100, 1,200 students, and our CCP program makes up about 30% of that population. So we're pretty big, but of course, COVID, we've seen a decline. I think everybody has seen that. And in CCP as well, we've seen a decline with our numbers. But, we are a tight-knit community. We have limited resources, so we do what we can with what we have. At BCC, the CCP program is housed in the Student Services Department. And so my role, I do a lot just because we're such a small school. So in addition to me coordinating the CCP program, I'm also an admissions representative. So when I'm not dealing with CCP students, I'm dealing with traditional students who are coming into the door. My position is a one-man show. I do the recruiting, the advising, the registering. I do everything for CCP. And it's been that way since I started the position. I did have a career coach with me for a couple of years, but that person has since moved on. So it's just me again. And I work very, very closely with the admissions, with financial aid, and with the registrar. So yeah, that's just a little bit about us.
Jennifer?
So, my journey with dual enrollment began when the community college labeled dual enrollment as Huskins. So that was back in 2011. And then a year later, Career and College Promise was implemented. And Halifax County serves two counties, all of Halifax County and a small portion of Northampton County. And as Sierra said, that I'm kind of a one-man show with the college transfer. We have 8 public high schools, 3 private schools, 1 charter school, and 4 early colleges. 3 of the early colleges are here on campus, and we have 1 off campus. And along with myself, we do have liaison in each of the early colleges. And I do work very closely with them. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, and Mackenzie, just a few words about PMOC.
Yeah, no problem. So Knoxville, Tennessee, about 2 years ago, I just celebrated my 2-year anniversary here at PCC. So very excited about that. And I've been in this position almost immediately, so close to 2 years as well. Piedmont Community College, our main campus is in Person County, and then I serve in Caswell County. So there is a liaison on the Person side, and then I serve on the Caswell side. Like Sierra said, we also are a pretty small college as well. So we have roughly 1,300 students between both campuses. And then for CCP in Caswell County, I have, give or take, 100 students each semester. So again, it being very rural, there's 1 high school, 1 middle school, and 4 elementary schools, but that's it.
Now, I'm noticing a common denominator here, a common theme, I would say, that we might want to visit a little bit later. But to move us into sort of our part 2 here and get into some questions to help lead us a bit. The first one that I'm going to actually pass along to you guys as panelists, and we'll start with Mackenzie for this one, is ideally, when you think about CCP, the demographics of dual enrollment cohorts should be similar to the demographics of sort of our sending high schools as a whole, right? But our data, if you take a look at our dashboards, I'm going to put that link in the chat here in just a moment, but our data, if you take a look at it, all too often leans in a particular direction. And we see pockets of particular demographics of students overrepresented in those cohorts. So with that in mind, your colleges obviously were here because you're standouts in terms of promoting diversity within the program and dual enrollment in your dual enrollment population. So can you share with us, each of you, some of your strategies for minimizing those sort of access gaps, if you will, in your dual enrollment population? How is it that you are rising to the top in terms of the diversity of the students who are accessing the program at your college?
So I could say this 100. We have, since I got here, we have a really great partnership with the high school, with the central office, with the principals, the counselors. For us, it's very important to keep that relationship really tight knit so they all know what's going on, what to be expected. And then as much as I recruit, they help as well. So if I can be upfront with them about the information and all the knowledge, then they're really helpful in that space. But we were talking about this earlier. So the high school is really great to work with. They set up career and college readiness days at the beginning of each semester. And they always invite us to come and set up as many tables as we would like. So that way the students can see the CTE or transfer pathways that they're taking in the high school and how they would move with them over to the community college. So it's giving all the students the opportunity to come out and see what's right in front of them, how those classes can transfer to a 4-year, or if they're just ready to go into the workforce, how they can earn a certificate with us just a little quicker. And while they're still in high school, all for free, and then go that route instead. Another thing we do, talk about this a lot, we try to meet them where they are. So with it being a very rural area and just a small high school in general, I do have an office at the high school and at the community college. And I was blessed for them to put me right next to the counselors, and I sit almost in like a fishbowl aspect. So when they walk by in the middle of the day, they can pop into my office or at the end of the day, anything like that. So they know where to find me. We try to host virtual days. That obviously was a huge thing going on during COVID. PCC and the CCP program, we called it like a Google Hangout takeover. So I was able to drop in with some CTE teachers myself, and then some transfer teachers as well, just for like psychology. So that way all of the students could have access to that information. And the high school, after pre-COVID, and I'm hoping this year too, since there's certain courses that all the students have to take, like English and math, things like that, that's such an easy way for me to get out in front of them and make sure that, again, that they all have the knowledge for CCP to come over here and help recruit that way too. And then I'll just touch on this really quick. We implemented, it's called a fast track program. So we basically just fast track them through the first 2 years, and they have the opportunity to earn an associate's degree by the time they graduate from high school as well. So I had 3 that did that this past year, and then I have 15 coming up in this new cohort, but it's open to everyone. They just have to show the initiative and kind of take it upon themselves to make sure they're coming and meeting with me, but we do what we can.
Good nuggets there we'll circle back to, but Jennifer, if you'll share with us a little bit about strategies for you guys.
Sure. Much like Mackenzie, we have those we have over 50% of our students are unprecedented population, first generation low income students. And our areas are really rural, deep rural areas. So we want to make our campus really inviting to not only our students that's on campus, but to the community. So we have college fairs, and we attend parent nights and any other activities that the schools have pre-COVID. And I also traveled with a team. I have a team, especially in our CTE programs and our advanced manufacturing. Our guys like to carry motors and things to solder, so the students can not only see what we offer, but see what they would actually be doing. And it's difficult sometimes, but we've been able to get through that in pre-COVID. Now, during COVID, we've had these summits that coincide with the parent nights and the parent activities from the schools, and we have really close relationships with the schools as well. So we're able to own in on those events and be able to have these little parts with the events where we get to communicate with the students and they get to ask questions. And the most important thing for us is the parents to be involved so they can actually see what's going on with us. Not only do we do these with the schools, but we also go into the churches and other community events and other businesses. promoting our programs, and that helps a lot. Like I said, it's important for the community and the parents to see exactly what's going on with us. All of our programs are constantly being advertised on media. That's difficult sometimes because we do have areas where internet is not accessible in some of our rural areas. So we still do the old-fashioned things like make flyers and posters and things like that to promote our programs as well in the businesses, and especially the grocery stores and things like that. So that seems to be working, and we're really proud of the relationships that we have in our communities.
More good nuggets. We're going to hold it though, and we're going to let Sierra share a little bit about some strategies they've employed.
Yeah, it's so good to hear that these other two ladies' schools is doing some of the same things we are. I just noted that personnel is a big thing. Like I said, it's a one-man show, but for me, I think when BCC hired me, one of the themes of my interview was going above and beyond for education for these students. And when I say that, I live by that. And we're going to touch on it later, but I call myself an intrusive advisor. But then also having a partnership with your LEA, we have such an amazing partnership with Bladen County Schools. And it started with our previous president, Dr. William Fent, who's retired, and it has continued with our current president, Dr. Amanda Lee. And there's been changes at the LEA. The superintendent was Dr. Robert Taylor. He's actually at the DPI office. He's like the deputy superintendent now. And it has continued with Dr. Jason Atkinson. But I also have an office at both of our high schools, both of our public high schools here. And I am with the counselors at both of the high schools. And they have given me access to Power School, which is amazing because the counselors don't have to do any extra work. They're already busy. We know that. And then just the community. I'll also say, because Bladen County is so small, it's such a rural county, our resources are limited. And so our LEA really depends on us to be able to help fulfill high school graduation requirements at their schools. And so we get a lot of students who are just trying to come in and get some classes so they can graduate. And then also, I don't see my students as just students as numbers. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm an intrusive advisor. And so I'm not afraid to talk to any student. I especially love getting with the parents. I think bringing in my parents is key. And I started with a parent information night that I host. Didn't get to do it last year for COVID, but I was able to do it virtually this year. And having the parents know that they have somebody who is going to fight for their student, who's going to advocate for their student. And I'm not a yes person. When I advise students, I talk to the student about what they want, what their goal, not what their parents is. And that's interesting for some parents because they're not used to not having their way. But it's just, I'm looking at the student and I'm preparing that student for their future. And so I think that's what works.
Oh, I'm taking lots of notes, so I'm going to prepare you guys. We're going to come back to talk about some of these things. But one of the questions, or our next question that I'm really interested in, I'm sure our attendees are as well, is around barriers to access. So we all know that those exist. And so my question is, what are some of the barriers to access that you guys have observed in working with your students on your campuses? And specifically, how has your campus worked to mitigate some of those barriers, to remove them? And let's start with Mackenzie again for that one.
Okay, so one of our barriers, again, being a smaller college, we have smaller classes, smaller classroom sizes. So since we do have two campuses, we are able to put students on both campuses in an ITV room. So that way they're able to have the same information, but then they still get that face-to-face interaction every other week with their teacher. So small classes can be a blessing. It can also be really hard on the students sometimes too. We use a Viso a lot. So that really helps me stay on track with students, keep in touch with their teachers. So I get a notification if they haven't logged on the Blackboard in so many days, if they're doing well in a class, if they're not doing well in the class. And then attendance is really important too for us, obviously, across the board. But I get a notification straight to my email from a Viso. Transportation, I know that can be a really big barrier for some students. We have gotten so lucky that our campus on the Caswell side, it backs up to the high school. So the students actually just walk across the football field and they are on our campus. So they never have to worry about that. We have, again, our partnership with the high school, with that area, we were able to kind of mimic their bell schedule. So the students have 4 blocks a day, and we were able to build our CCP classes and our transfer courses around the high school schedule. So that way they do have access to all of this, and it coincides with their regular high school day and time. So if they do take the bus, they can take the bus to the high school, walk over to the college, and be on time for their first block class. And for some of these CTE courses, cosmetology, welding, they do take up 2 blocks during the day sometimes. But again, the high school is always willing to work with us, and student success is our main goal, obviously, at the end of the day. So they're okay with them staying over there a little bit longer. And then the last thing, probably for a really large barrier, would be the cost of textbooks. So we are so lucky in our county, PCC and Caswell County split the cost of the textbooks so students don't pay anything for them. So that is a huge draw for students to be able to come over, and I know, wow, it's a big deal. Come over, who? Oh yeah, so it's equal across the board. Sorry, for all students, they don't have to worry about a $200 English textbook or anything like that. And then a lot of our courses have implemented free online resources. So again, there's no checking out a book either.
I forget my camera's on. I said, "Wow," and you can see it. But nonetheless, how about Jennifer?
So yes. The same barriers, we have the same barriers. Of course, that Aviso tool is wonderful. Retention tool is wonderful. One of the barriers we have pre-COVID was, of course, transportation for our students, and none of our schools are within walking distance besides our early colleges. So, of course, we align our courses with our high school courses, and we've even had the opportunity for some of our schools to create another bus route for these students and try to work with cohorts so they can all come over at the same time for some of our courses. So that's worked out fine. We're not quite there with the books yet. We're working on that. We have gone to a new online book service that we're really excited about, which actually started today. So we're really excited about how that's going to work out with the students. It seems to have been a better choice for us so far. So we're hoping that works out. Other than that, I've run into some barriers with probably still buy-in with some of the schools systems, with some of those way out rule systems. We want every student to have the opportunities or have the opportunity to participate in CCP, but it can be difficult. So we work with the students really closely to get out in those rural areas again, to be able to give those students those opportunities. So that's one of our big barriers still. And also our internet connections with our online courses. It's not so good in our rural areas. So we do open the high school campuses for some of those students. The closer they are to those campuses, they can get in and be able to get to those online resources. We also have created a counseling online resource for our students that's really working out well, especially during the misunfortunate things that have happened because of COVID. And that seems to be really booming and helping our students. And we're hoping to expand that even more upcoming fall semester.
Great thing. Sierra.
All 3 of us are kind of doing similar stuff. I am amazed by your counties. I think, Mackenzie, your county is paying for books once I heard about, there's another county, there's some other counties who do that. I have been talking about it for a few years down here, and it has not hit yet, but hopefully it will hit and stick. I think there may be something coming up with all this COVID grant money that the schools are getting. So hopefully, but of course, textbooks is one thing for us. We have had situations where students decide not to enroll in a program because they cannot afford the textbooks. What Bladen County has done, the students do not pay student fees here, so they are only responsible for the textbooks. So our instructors will put textbooks on reserve in the library. The student cannot take that book and take it home, but they can go over there and use it. And we are also doing access to online textbooks. Now, there's still a cost with the online textbook, the way we're doing it. There was talk about doing some program where it would be included in like student fees or something like that, but we never did it. I'm not sure what happened there, but we also, our instructors tend to keep the textbooks a little while longer so that students have an opportunity to donate it to the incoming cohorts. Another barrier that was mentioned is transportation. And I think we're doing something like Dr. Jones's area. Bladen County Schools are busing our students over. Now, they have always bused over the CTE kids. There was an agreement years ago before I came, and they bused the kids over. Well, now, and they thought it was going to be difficult for the college transfer students because, their schedules can be all over the place. But now we have a system in place where if a student needs to ride the bus to our campus, then I sign them up for classes that meet between the first 2 periods of the day or the last 2 periods of the day. So they come over, do their classes, and go back over to the high school. And that has been phenomenal. Of course, COVID happened, so that didn't happen. But I think we're getting back to that. So that was great. And the last one that was also mentioned was internet access. But we do have internet on our campus in the parking lot. And I think the schools have internet in their parking lots, and the students can check out laptops from their schools. I think they let them get them in the summer too. And then one major barrier, and it's with a particular group. We have a large Hispanic Latinx community here, and the language barrier. I have so many Hispanic and Latinx students enrolled in my program, but you know how I mentioned I like to speak with the parents. I struggle to get the parents into my office. There is a disconnect there, and I hate it because even though I don't speak the language, I don't mind the student translating, but I cannot get the parents to come in, and that's just something I wish that I could change. One year when I do recruiting letters that I send to the homes, and I decided to do letters in Spanish. I sent 2 letters. I sent an English letter and a Spanish, and I used Google Translate, and I think it kind of worked, but I was just trying to be innovative. But that's what we're doing.
And we're going to circle back to some of these things. Just a reminder, because I do see some questions in the chat and in the Q&A feature, and I encourage you to keep those coming. We have one more question just to get some feedback from all 3 of our panelists, and then we're going to turn to those questions from the field. And so our last question here is if you guys can share for us about practices that you've implemented using data and how those have been instrumental in terms of the positive outcomes that you've seen on your campus. So we've got these great data dashboards, and I'm sure even prior to having those, you were sort of having your ear to the ground, so to speak, in terms of looking at your data around your students and student outcomes there on your campus. So thinking about that and thinking about the dashboards, share with us some practices around using that data, how it informs some of your practices, and obviously it positively affected your outcomes. So let's start with Jennifer for this one, and then we'll go to Sierra and then close with Mackenzie.
Okay. One of the ways we've increased enrollment using data is merely just showing the success and how well the students do. When you have those parent nights and those church meetings and those other community events, we like to show off. We like to show our students off, and it's nothing better to show off than to take a student with you that's doing well, or maybe even a student that's had some other experiences to share. but it really makes a difference. And it has for us is our enrollment has increased because of that. And then two, with the grades, for instance, fall semester, mid-semester grades, we use those grades and also using that Aviso retention, that report that comes through, and it gives you the grades of the students on a weekly basis. At least I get one on a weekly basis. So we take those grades and we look at them by course. And that way, if there's a C or below a massive percentage of those students, and that does happen, that gives us the opportunity to adjust our retention strategies. And we get the chance to talk to our instructors about that. And then with that, they can provide additional resources for the students way ahead of time before that semester is in, way before midterm. And that gives those students the opportunity to increase those grades, or maybe book a extra session with the tutors or our tutoring department, or with EOC, or with student support services, or whatever they need. That gives them that extra time to do so. So we do pretty well with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier that I'm an intrusive advisor, and research shows that intrusive advising really works. And so I am very into my students know me, their parents know me, everybody knows me, and I make it a point for my CTE classes. We don't have very many on our campus, but I go around to each class just to see how the kids are doing. For my college transfer students, I use Aviso a lot. Like, Aviso is the best thing they ever created. I get those reports to Dr. Jones, and I set it up for whenever my student drops under a 70, it pings me, and I am sending a nice email to my student's guidance counselor. And my principals are very involved here too, and they like to be included on those emails. So I'm sending an email to everybody. And I need the student to understand that this is serious, that these classes and these grades affect your high school transcript, which affects your high school GPA, which has an impact on you getting accepted into the university or community college of your choice, but really the universities. And so I make it a big deal. Like, those emails, my students are usually on it once they get those emails. And then also, I figured out a way to keep my parents in the loop too. As you know, FERPA is a thing, but I often will contact a student and say, hey, and I'll email the parent too and say, hey, we need to have a meeting. When can y'all come in? And that's how I get, and the parents love to be involved that way, because they want to make sure that they are preparing their student to go off to university and be successful. And if they know that their student is hurting their chances, they're on top of it. Another thing is, and with the parent involvement, there's research that shows that having a parent involved improves a student's academic performance, and it improves the student, or enhances the student's attitude and behavior in school. And so I really like my parents to come in. I like them to know what's going on. And our instructors, I have asked them to send me midterm grades and final grades. Because I actually have to report those to the high schools. And when I get those, I make sure that our guidance counselors are reaching out to those families and giving them that information. And then again, I like to send my little email where I say, hey, we need to meet. And that's all I'll put. And the parents like, we need to meet. Let's get on the schedule. So that's what I do.
All right, Mackenzie.
So we are my counterpart for the other campus. She and I pull data every semester as that we work really close with the registrar's office, and to see how many students were enrolled for the semester, where we lost some numbers, both female to male populations and things like that. And again, to compare CTE courses against each other, like who's enrolling in what, maybe for what reason. So we are responsible for reporting all of our information back to the college. And then we also like to send it over to the high schools. Again, like Dr. Jones had said, there's nothing better than to show off. So it's a great time to do that. And we want to show off at the college all of our hard work that we've been doing. So hopefully when we have an influx of students, we always show that back to the college as well. Grades are a huge thing for all of us. I know that, and you both had mentioned it. So yes, we do use a VISO, and then our instructors over here are really great at meeting the students where they need to be, or if they don't think that they're all the way up to the level of that class. Again, that's a benefit and a drawback of a small class sizes, but typically all of the instructors know the students, know that they're in high school, and work with them diligently. And if they're not following through, the student isn't, the instructors will reach out to me typically the second their grade goes below like a 75 or anything like that. So that way I can jump in. I obviously love to email, but I love to call them on the phone and find out what they're doing. So that's really nice too. And then we started using the texting in a VISO. So that's been really helpful too. So, I mean, everyone's on their phone all day long. So, and then going off of grades during COVID, they weren't able to come in for tutoring, but we saw that as a huge thing that they still needed, obviously. So we implemented online tutoring, and I've heard from other instructors, students just feel sometimes, the ones that are just a little bit more shy, feel more comfortable going to tutoring in an online situation, whether it's through Zoom, so they can ask their questions like that with just one other person rather than it being on campus. So we will continue to have our online tutoring sessions for as long as, probably forever, because it really was beneficial for our students last year. So, and then the last thing we try, if I have students that are not continuing to enroll with me after just one semester, I always have a list of students who have ever taken classes with us. So I don't just assume if they're not coming back for whatever reason. I do, like Sierra had said, the intrusive counseling or advising, definitely reaching out to make sure that I didn't miss something, because I want them to come back. Or if there's something going on at the high school and they're trying to figure out ways we can fit a CCP class into their schedule. So just making sure that the communication is constant is important.
Again, I hear some common themes here that keep floating to the top that we're going to revisit. But before we get to those in our time left, we did have some questions that I just want to lift up to you guys. One of them, if each of you can just share again, how many high schools are you serving in your program that are in your LEAs? So if we could just think through how many high schools number and just share, and we'll start with Mackenzie to Jennifer to Sierra, just if you could share it.
So in Caswell County, I just have one public high school. There's nowhere else for them to go unless they're a homeschool student. So then I have a handful of them as well, but just one high school.
I have 8 public high schools, 3 private schools, 1 charter school, and 4 early colleges.
There are 2 public high schools in Bladen County. There's a public charter school. There are 2 private schools, and then I have homeschool students. So
I hope that gives everyone sort of a quick picture of each of the sort of partner LEAs, if you will, for each of the colleges represented. Then the next question from the attendees was around the textbooks, because as my face went wow, I'm sure other people's faces were going wow as well. Wow, free textbooks. Because we all know that is a challenge, and it's certainly a barrier for students. There was a mention a little bit further down in the chat about open resources, so open educational resources, which I know some campuses have talked about and tried to employ in the ways that they can to help sort of alleviate that barrier for students and the cost of textbooks. So just a quick round robin, and I know Mackenzie was sharing, but let's start with Mackenzie again. Who has free textbooks or resources to help assist? Let me put it like that. Let's make it broader. Who has resources to help with textbook costs, and who does not, just of our panelists? Because I think it'd be fairly representative of the system as a whole.
So all of my students that are in the public high school, again, there's not being a charter or a private school there, they have access to the free textbooks and in all of their CTE courses too. And then I saw someone else ask about fees and such, and they don't pay for any of that. But I don't think that's the same, correct me if I'm wrong, for Person County. Is all under Piedmont Community College. So they do pay for their books over here, but no, they don't anymore. But it was such a barrier in Caswell. So we got together with the central office and they said that they would split that cost with us to help enrollment.
Good segue, Mackenzie. So if you guys can speak to the fees as well, that was a question while you're talking about the textbook fees, whether or not your students pay fees at your college. So Jennifer, you're next. And then
Okay, so none of our early colleges pay for books, but I have 4 different separate school systems. 2 of my school systems do pay for books, and the public high schools pay for all of their books, and then 2 don't. And my homeschool students, of course, they pay for their books, and they all pay fees. But those same school systems that pay for books also pay for their student fees and equipment and everything. And the others that don't pay for their books, they do have to pay for fees as well.
Bladen County, the students are responsible for their textbooks currently. I think I heard some mumbling about using grant money, hopefully, to cover books. I don't know where it went, but I am praying for that because that would be really helpful. Bladen BCC does cover they waive the student fees for our CCP students. And that's any little bit helps. We do have an early college here. Early college is not under me, but they are part of the LEA. They're housed on our campus, and those students don't pay anything. I think that hopefully somebody will review that and may consider that for the college transfer and CTE babies.
All right, I think we covered that one, and I would say that's pretty representative of the system. You have some who cover the fees or waive them, which means they're covering them some way, right, on that campus, and then you have some that don't. So it's sort of up to that campus and what their ability is to do that. In some cases, school systems are covering it, depending upon the area, but hopefully that deals with or answers that question. Someone had a question here about a comment regarding the hesitation for some of the rural schools to promote CCP. I can't recall if someone mentioned that, but whomever did, if you could just share a couple of seconds on that.
I'll share with that. The hesitation with our rural school systems is one, they don't have adequate internet services. Number 2, transportation. And number 3, with all of the other things that they have to deal with, sometimes administration is reluctant to have their students participate because of some of the challenges that they have. But we constantly keep working towards that, or trying to find some types of funds to be able to provide better internet, or the bus service helps. And we're still working with those principals to try to provide those resources for those students. So we're constantly working at that.
Thank you. And I see that there have been some replies to some of the questions. So I encourage those of you who are able to take a look at the chat to some of the replies. And so I won't take the space to sort of rehash those, but there are some questions and replies going on in the chat. So again, take a look there. We do have a question about sort of outreach, follow-up with students, and whether or not your high school counselors have access to a VISO. And if you can just, for those, I think actually all 3 of you have a VISO, if I remember correctly. Can you just speak to that, whether your high school counselors have access and sort of what that relationship looks like really quickly? And let's start with Sierra.
No, our high school counselors do not have access to our Aviso. They do not have access to our data till or self-service, two other systems we use. And quite honestly, I don't think that they would want to. When I got access to Power School, they were happy to not have to, do extra work and get transcripts for me. So, but they do not have access.
And then Mackenzie?
Ours don't either. And they don't need it because I send them everything. Especially the bad stuff. I just send it, so they'll know. So they'll know. But I think in the beginning, when we first got a visa, we considered doing that, but I'm not quite sure what happened with that. But at this moment, we don't. But eventually, we may give them access to it.
Our counselors do not have access to Aviso either. Like Sierra said, when they gave me Power School access, they were very thankful not to have to print transcripts for me anymore. So it was nice, but issue with a student and I can't reach them for whatever reason, I can always copy them on my emails in Aviso or just obviously regular email, and they're great for follow-up too.
Right, we have a few minutes left, and I actually wanted to sort of hit on some themes that I noticed as each of you were sharing. And then I have a question too, if we have time, that I'd love to hear some of your feedback on before we close out. But I would offer that I noticed that each of you seem to have strong collaborations with your LEA partners. Each of you obviously are in small communities. And so I'm wondering if there's some nuggets of wisdom and practice that we can sort of take from that in terms of the ability that you have to build out those relationships there in those communities, which are obviously, I think, we could infer impacting positively your outcomes with your students for sure. You all seem to have some similar challenges around barriers with transportation. But one thing that I really like that each of you spoke to as well was about your presence in those LEAs. Most of you actually physically in the building and going to where the students are. I think we can't say enough how important that is to really allowing all of our students to have the information, hence giving them the access to take advantage of this program. So really quickly, in 2 minutes, I'm going to give you two questions, and I'm going to let you pick the one you want to speak to as we close out. The first one is about one thing that you would like to change, because each of you have been working in dual enrollment for a while. Is there one thing that you would like to change about the facilitation of the program on your campus? And then the second question that I'd love to get some of your feedback on is what's a practice, something that you saw with COVID that was positive, that you really hope will stick? A lot of times we sort of highlight and lift up the negative things about COVID, but I think some great things came out of COVID personally. And you sort of alluded to some of those with some of the practices that you put in place. So anything you want to see stick that you came to develop during COVID. So choose one, and we'll close out and let you guys speak to those. So how about we start with Mackenzie?
I don't think I would change anything, but things that worked well during COVID, obviously these Zoom sessions. So I do hope in some way we're still able to implement that during the school year. And I think we will definitely in the fall semester and see how things go for the spring. But for students that don't feel comfortable or who cannot come to school right now, they have access to that it's just there indefinitely, so they can go back and watch the recording and things like that. So I hope that sticks. And then I know we're tutoring service around, which has been so helpful for me to just say, here's the link, make sure you register yourself, and they can get access. There's an echo. With their papers and stuff within like 48 hours if they need it immediately. So super helpful in that space. So I'm glad we're going to keep that around.
About 20 seconds, Jennifer, and then Sierra.
The same, the online, whatever they created online, I want it to stay forever. Because of that, those students that can't get to us or can't get themselves involved, their parents, or they were able to get to these online meetings from their work areas and wherever they were, and I think it's great. And as far as what I could change, I just wish it could be free for everybody. no cost, and that would be wonderful. No book cost, no fees. That would be great for me.
You get to close this out.
All right, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that it's the textbooks for me. I would love for my babies, and I call them my babies, I would love for them all to be able to have access to free textbooks and still take as many classes as they choose to take. And I say that because these kids, most of them are low income, first generation students. And so when they go off to a community college or a university, they're going to get Pell Grant anyway that covers their textbooks. So I just wish we could do that now.
All right. And we're up to the minute. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you to our panelists.